All right, let's get on to our main event. So I see we have Bill here. He's got a presentation.
Good evening.
Go ahead, take it away, Bill.
All right, and from the beginning. All right, thanks for having me here, and President Andrew, thanks for the greeting. Well, tonight I'm going to talk about something that I really like in amateur radio, and that is 10-meter operation. And I'm kind of pinch hitting tonight. The original person that we were going to get to do this was K8 QS, Quentin Schultz, and he does these with ham radio perspectives. But I'm going to fill in, and I'm going to do the best I can, and I think we're going to have fun. This is the first ham radio presentation I've ever done. I've done a lot of legal presentations to lawyers and paralegals and secretaries and staff people, but I've never done a ham radio presentation. So here we go. And there's my first slide. There's my QSL card in the upper right. And we see the sunspots are coming back. Just a little slide there. But we're going to talk about 10-meter operation. Here's a little bit about me. I'm an attorney. By profession, I've been a ham since 1977. I was originally licensed as WD4FOS. I upgraded to technician before the FCC in 1979. I made general in 1980 before the FCC. Well, that's how you did it back then. And the technician and the general exam was the same. The difference was the code speed, the difference between 5 and 13 words a minute. I upgraded to extra in 1987. And I upgraded to extra in 1998. I've been AF4LL since then. Other calls I've had, nothing special about that, but I was N4JSG as a general, and I was KK4NS as an advanced. Life member of the ARRL, and I'm also a life member of 1010 International, and there's my 1010 number, 71872. I'm interested in all other aspects of radio, not just ham radio. And then I came in through shortwave listening. I like broadcast DXing. I like TV DXing, scanners. I'm a member of NASWA, which is the North American Shortwave Association. I first got involved with 10 meters in 1980 during Cycle 21. We moved out into the country in rural Kentucky, and I literally worked the world. I went from working 10 states on a really crappy 80-meter dipole to working the world and working all states in one summer in 1980. I'm a former professional rodeo cowboy. Not something that comes up much, don't talk about it much. But I rode bareback, I rode saddle bronc, and I'm a former, I did that for several years. I was also an agent in the thoroughbred horse industry back in the mid to late 90s before I went to law school. I'm originally from the Commonwealth of Kentucky. All right, I'm going to quote the great Mark Twain. Well, kind of paraphrasing, I guess. The rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. Mark Twain said something similar. And that's what we think about 10 meters as we are just coming out of the bottom of the sunspot cycle. All right, some questions we're going to answer tonight. Kind of an overview of the program. What's so great about 10 meters? When is 10 really open? What are typical 10-meter conditions with and without sunspot activity? What are some of the best 10-meter modes? What are the best 10-meter antennas? What are the best 10-meter rigs? What do you need to know about 10-meter operating? I think everybody can benefit in some way from this presentation, but I'm particularly aiming this for guys and gals that have never been through a sunspot cycle. I've had several people tell me that. They've come in at the bottom of the cycle and they've never really operated 10 meters. And I think you'll get a lot out of this. This is what the presentation is not. I'm not trying to convert everyone to the church of 10 meters. I make no claim to be the Pope of 10 meters, not the authority on 10 meters. But what I will tell you is what I've done has worked very, very well considering the time and money that I devote to amateur radio. The great thing about this hobby is it's the biggest smorgasbord in the world, and you can eat as much as you want, whatever you want, and you won't get fat. And there's something for everybody in this hobby. I reactivated an amateur radio at the beginning of August 2020. I've made about 1,450 10-meter contacts. That includes everything. That's the powwow net. That's the Friday night net from Alexandria. Those are skywave contacts. That's everything. I estimate about 600 of them are skywave contacts. I've worked 37 states and 20 countries since then. I've sent out 275 paper QSLs since February. I know that because I just got another shipment in from my vendor. This has been done on a dead band, and I operate a pretty modest station. And I think I've done pretty well considering that. All right. 10-meter activity is possible. Well, how do we tell if 10 meters is open? There's a lot of different ways to do that. And this is not an exhaustive table, but a lot of guys look at DX clusters, PropNet. A lot of people swear by PSK Reporter, gray line propagation maps, propagation prediction software, and I mentioned VOA Cap. This came from the Voice of America. It was originally developed by the Voice of America, the big international broadcaster. Magazine forecast, that's very low tech, but if you look in CQ, QST every month, you'll see the propagation forecast, and there's all kinds of emails you'll get on that. It'll give you an idea about propagation. 10-meter beacons, that's a great way to tell if 10 is open. And here's something I do a lot. I monitor channel 38 lower sideband, 11 meters, 27,385. I got that idea from a 1010 member a long time ago. I didn't come in through CB, so I thought, what's the point? If that's open, 10 meters is open. And I'll call CQ on 28.4 if I hear people on channel 38, whether I hear anybody or not, and more often than not, I'll work somebody. Here we go. Here's just a screenshot of DX clusters, some of the stations you're going to hear. It's pretty nice, very effective. DXWatch.com. That's something I've used from time to time. PropNet. Here's a screenshot of PropNet and some of the openings for PSK 31. PSK Reporter. A lot of guys like that. I know several of you have told me that when we've worked on the repeaters, worked on the air. VOA Cap. Here's a screenshot of VOA Cap. You can plug in the numbers and you can get a prediction of what 10 meters or 15, 20, or anywhere else is going to be like at any given time. And it'll give you an approximation of what the band is going to be like. It's a very effective way to tell if the band is open. All U.S. amateurs can operate between 28 and 28.5. Okay, when I came into ham radio in 1977, the phone band started at 28.5, and of course I couldn't touch it. You could operate 28.1 to 28.2 on CW. That's what you had to do. That was the only thing you could do. Not an exhaustive list here, but this is where some of the activity is. You'll hear CW at the lower part of the band. I mean, the phone band doesn't start to 28.3, but I can guarantee you're not going to hear anybody on CW at 28.280. You're just not going to. They're going to be at the low end of 10 meters. FT8, one of the digital modes. There are many more, but that's the calling frequency for FT8, 28074. RTTY activity, calling frequency 28087. PSK 31, 28.120. The calling frequency for single sideband is 28.4. The great majority of activity, and I mean great majority, is going to be between 28.3 and 28.5. I can probably count a couple dozen contacts I've made since I reactivated that have been above 28.5. Very, very few, but every now and then you'll hear someone. One of the 1010 nets is at 28.8, for instance, from a long time back. Let's see, QRP SSB, 28.385. AM activity, 29 to about 29.2. At the last big opening a couple weeks ago that I worked, there were a lot of people around 29. I worked a lot of people probably worked 15 or 20 people. I worked 100 people that weekend, but there were a lot of people on AM, good signals, your voice is natural, and real nice. All kinds of different rigs too, nice. 29.6 FM and repeaters. And the standard offset is minus 100 kilohertz. Some of them are toned, some of them aren't. So when the band is really open, you'll hear FM repeaters and you'll work them all over. And of course, beacons, 28.190 to 28.225, give or take in that area. And those are really low powered stations. They're running 5 watts, 1 watt, 10 watts. They're running a vertical. If 10 is really open, you'll hear beacons. That's a good way to tell if 10 meters is open. One thing I've noticed about 10 meters is there's a certain loyalty around the band. I hear a lot of the same guys. Today I worked KC4TVZ. If the band's open, you'll hear him on 28.425. I've worked Todd in Georgia probably 8 or 10 times. Todd has 175 countries confirmed just on 10 meters. He's a 10-meter legend. Absolutely incredible. Several guys like the WB0QLC in Kansas. I've probably worked Steve 6 or 7 times. A lot of the local guys I hear my friend David, KB1NG. I'll hear him on 10 working people right behind me, right in front of me. W8MOX, W2WCM, we work some of the same stations. So people that get into 10 meters tend to like 10 meters. And this is not a 1010 presentation, but just a quick plug here. 1010 International is dedicated to 10-meter operation, getting people active on 10 meters. And I think it tends to be seasonal based upon the sunspot cycle. You have a lot of people join when the band's really open. You'll have fewer people join otherwise. But a little bit about 1010. Breeze shooters, well, that's one of the local nets. Of course, we have the famous powwow net, 28444 at 8:30 on Thursday evening. I've worked several of the local 10-meter nets since we've had openings. Worked one recently in Jacksonville, Florida. I worked one in Albany, Georgia. I worked one in Racine, Wisconsin. So when your band is open, you'll hear these guys on their local ground wave net. 1010 has a net every day at 1800 UTC, at 28.380 and 28.800 every day but Sunday. So if the band is open, you'll hear guys on there. That's pretty neat. What's so great about 10 meters? Now, anyone that asks that has probably never operated during a previous sunspot cycle. 10 meters is a band of legend, just like 6 meters is. The little radio you see right there, that's a Radio Shack HTX-10. I had one of those in law school, and I had an antenna on my deck. I had my Antron A99 vertical on the deck, and I worked the world with that a couple sunspot cycles ago. 25-watt rig. I worked a guy today using that rig, and he was 5'9" from Illinois. When 10's hot, it's hot. And here we go. You can look back at several of the different sunspot cycles. I can't tell you what cycle 25 is going to be like. All kinds of predictions. They're all over the board. We've heard our own Carrie, WA4 BQM, talk about it. I don't know. There's people smarter than me that have a better prediction than that. But I can tell you when 10 is open, it's really open. And you'll probably do better with less than anything else. And again, I came in at during cycle 21, which was this second or third highest in history, which was just absolutely incredible. This is from QST, April 2021, page 32. They mention here in one of the posts to cite them. For good, consistent worldwide 10-meter openings, you need approximately a sunspot number of about 70, solar flux of 100. The numbers for 15 are going to be a little bit lower. 50 for the sunspot number, 90 for the solar flux, and of course that's going to go down even more for 20 meters. But that's from QST. 10 is more consistent than 6. The height of the HF, the high frequency spectrum, originally defined as VHF way back when hams were sent to the useless frequencies of 200 meters and down. But that's a little chart daytime 28 megahertz propagation. Of course, 10 meters is a very wide band, 28 to 29.7. You got a little bit of room to play around for everything. A little bit of everything on 10 meters. Relative, let's compare 10 to 20 to 40. Everybody knows this, 28 to 29.7, 1.7 kilohertz versus 350 kilohertz for 20 and 300 for 40 meters. So you're not going to step, let's say you're less likely to step on somebody than you would if you were working on 40 meters. You get on AM on 10 meters, of course, legally you can operate anywhere you can operate phone, and you can get on there and you're a lot less likely to step on somebody. And that's a nice thing about 10 meters. Of course, another nice thing about 10 meters, it's easy to make an antenna. A half-wave dipost, 17 feet approximately 17 feet in length. One ballon in the middle, easy to put up anywhere. Or an end-fed antenna, 9-to-1 end-fed ballon and your coax, you'll do fine with that. I have an inverted V up about 35 feet, one of the antennas I use for 10 meters, and I get good results. I use both on the powwow net. Some guys I hear better with horizontal, some guys I hear better with vertical. But antennas are easy to make for 10 meters. When is 10 really open? Well, that can be deceptive. A lot of guys will tell me, well, gosh, the band sounds dead. And okay, that's fine. And maybe it does. We've mentioned beacons already, FM repeaters. Something that I do, again, that is very, very effective. You go to channel 38. You don't have to have a CB. You can go to go online, listen online. Or of course, most ham receivers will have general coverage. If 27.385 is open, 10 meters is open. I can guarantee it. And those guys almost sound like hams. They have call signs. They will give their first name. They'll give their QTH. No, they're not real call signs. They'll get them from their CB club. They tend to be polite. Their QSOs are very short. They're very short QSOs. They're not going to sit and rag chew. They tend to be on top of each other, though not like you would hear on AM. If 10 is really, really open, channel 6, 27025 or 27085, those are AM channels. They call that the Super Bowl. Those guys run a lot of power. You hear the heterodyne in the background. Not how I want to do radio. I don't care. I'm not going to talk to them. But if that's open, 10 is really open. You've got a good opening. Something else here that you will easy to pick up, what they call free banders, 27555 upper side band. You'll hear a lot of Europeans on that frequency. So if 10's open to Europe, you'll hear those guys, you'll hear the free banders. I don't really care what they do as long as they stay below 28 megahertz. But again, those are some of the ways to tell if 10 is really open. 10 will sound dead. If I hear somebody on 27.385, I'll call CQ on 10 meters, and more often than not, I'll get somebody. It works out real well for me. What are typical 10-meter conditions? Well, depends on the time of day, depends on the season of the year. Morning to evening, when you have high sunspots, you're in a high sunspot year, 10 will be open most of the day. It'll be open into the evening. Absolutely incredible propagation. And of course, the band will shift as the day goes on. Late afternoon, you'll work Australia or Japan. In the morning, you'll work Europe. But it just depends. A sporadic DX. Okay, again, are you talking about sporadic year? Or are you talking about during a high sunspot year? Fairly consistent during the midday. A lot of sporadic E openings. In fact, there's one right now on 10 meters. I worked it today, and it's still open. E-skip, of course, is not sunspot dependent. You can hear E-skip at any time. More likely in the summer, you have more thunderstorms, more atmospheric activity around the solstice too, right around around the winter solstice. That's why the ARRL 10-meter contest is always in December. But you'll hear a lot of activity, and it was quite good last December, if I remember. Well, another thing, you always have ground wave. I've worked over 60 miles on ground wave. From here in Falls Church, I've worked all the way to the eastern shore of Maryland. I've worked all the way west to Harper's Ferry on ground wave. Depends on your antenna, a little more power dependent, so on. Gray line propagation, of course, as the sun goes west. Sporadic E skip. Very common on 10 meters and 6 too, of course. This is a major, mostly summer propagation mode for both 10 and 6 meters. Because of the low altitude of the E layer, the typical hop distance is around 1,400 miles, 2,300 kilometers. But multi-hop E skip can occur particularly in the late June, July, and August. Refraction during E skip is from patches of ionized E layer, so the area covered by the skip can be limited. And of course, you can be working someone on sporadic E, and 2 minutes later they're gone, or you hear them 5.9, you hear them 10 over. Really nice, strong, loud signal, and 2 minutes later they're 5.3. That's how E skip works. Sometimes it'll go for hours. Today's actually been pretty good. Here's an example of E-skip propagation. This list mentions 6, but it would be similar for 10, except, of course, wouldn't have to be quite as good for 10 to work. But some of the skip you would see on 10 or 6 meters, some for sporadic E. Just a small example of that. Another common mode of propagation is trans-equatorial propagation. That's why you can work guys in Argentina, Chile, Brazil, Latin America, Costa Rica, Mexico, the Caribbean, when you won't hear Europe on 10 meters, but works quite well. And my understanding is that the closer you are to the equator, the more you get that propagation. So theoretically, if you were in Puerto Rico, where my family's from, you could work trans-equatorial propagation almost daily. You would hear that quite well, and you would hear that quite often. But that's just a little bit about trans-equatorial propagation. Here's an example of trans-equatorial propagation over a 24-hour period. North-south, here we go. You see South America to North America, or South America to Europe, or Australia, New Zealand to Asia. But that's just an example of trans-equatorial propagation. And here's another example. Here is an example of gray line propagation. This is for 20 meters. And here's just a comparison of gray line propagation between 10 and 20 meters and where you're going to work on it. And of course, the world is round. This is this chart. This slide is two-dimensional, so you see it curved up because that's how the sun actually goes. But just an example of gray line propagation and a comparison between 10 and 20 meters. What are the best 10-meter modes? I don't know. What do you like? It's like, what's your favorite ice cream? I hear a lot of guys work FT8 when they can't do anything else. I know that. I don't work FT8, but I'm on the listserv of 1010 International. I get their emails on a daily basis. So I hear a lot of guys will say they work FT8. They hear guys on FT8. So they, a lot of that when you won't work someone on upper sideband. Of course, some single sideband, most active during strong sunspots. Band space to practice wide audio, especially on the higher end of the band. AM might come to life, and yeah, I think you would hear a lot more AM on 10 than you would hear on some of the lower bands, just because I know there's a calling frequency on 40. I think it's 7290 for AM. I'm not sure how much AM you would hear there, but certainly on 10 meters you wouldn't have as much of a problem getting on top of somebody. FM for accessing distant repeaters. I've worked repeaters all over the United States. I recently worked one in Massachusetts on one of the recent openings, 29620. What are the best 10-meter antennas? The great thing about 10-meter antennas is they're small. Doesn't take a lot of room, so people that don't have a lot of space, It's easy to put up a 10-meter antenna, and it mentions some of them here: multi-element directional antennas. My vertical is on a 20-foot mast. Dipoles are easy, or you can make one, you can buy one. They're certainly easy to make. In-fed antennas, I know a lot of guys like that. Some guys make them. I know some of the guys buy them. Vibroplex makes a good one. I think Buckmaster makes a pretty good one. Attic antennas, I know some of the guys in the club have those because they're not able to put up an outside antenna, but you don't need a lot of space for 10 meters. Loops are great. Verticals, ground plane antennas. CB antennas are great for 10 meters. My gosh, I've got a CB mag mount. I took a couple of inches of it off, put it on the mag, put it on my car. Operates at 1-to-1 at 28.4. It works very, very well. On a band opening, it sounds really, really well. And of course, 10 is easy to operate mobile with. Antennas are not a problem for 10 meters. Solarcon A99 or Antron 89, A99, just depends on who made it. That's one of the antennas I use. It's on a 20-foot mast. It tops out at 38 feet. The ads say it has 9 to 9 dB gain. I'm not sure about that, but I do pretty well on that antenna when the band is open. Again, I've had 60-mile ground wave contacts. I think it works really, really well for me. I've had that antenna over 20 years. I've used it on field day and made 1,500 contacts just on 10 meters with that antenna up at a good height. Here's another antenna, Solarcon IMAX 2000. My friend KB1NG has that antenna. It's the 5/8 wave version of the A99. It's 24 foot in length. The ads say it has 1 to 2 dB gain more than the A99. Great antenna. I hear good reports on it from people. Rotatable dipole. I've seen guys use that. I've had guys on the air tell me they use that. They get good results with it. A Moxon. Moxon was developed, I believe, by G6XN, Lester Moxon, an English ham, 2-element parasitic array antenna developed by this guy. That's a 20-meter version there in the picture. 10-meter version is just going to be smaller, and you get pretty good results with it. In-fed antenna, that just happens to be the Vibroplex version of it. Nice antenna, good broadband antenna. 100 watts on phone. You'll work the world on 10 meters with an antenna like that. Several guys in the club use in-fed. I believe KK4DAS uses an in-fed antenna and loves it. So I know these are great antennas. This antenna, it's not a particularly good slide here, but I actually have the specs to this. I used an antenna like this back in law school for a period of time. I have the specs to it, not hard to make. It's got 300 ohm lead there at the bottom. Not hard to make. You'll get good results from it. This is from a QST article, 20 years ago or something like that. But quite a nice antenna for what you have, for what you put into it. Loops are great, and I've seen guys use loops. They're easy. They're easy to put up. Some of them look like they're kind of pricey, but I know some guys get pretty good results with a loop. What are the best 10-meter rigs? Gosh, you can operate 10 meters with just about anything. New rigs, old rigs. You don't need work bands. Gosh, on these band openings, I work people using everything. I worked a guy today using an HTX, Radio Shack HTX 100. I used to have one of those. I used to have an HTX 10. Those are both 25-watt rigs. They do very, very well on 10 meters. Those are what we call the export radios. These are rigs that are made, they're made in Europe. They're made for 10 meters. CBers like them because they're easy to convert to 11 meters, and they have more power than 12 watts PP. I don't care about that part of it, but they work really well on 10 meters. and they'll have 70 watts, 80 watts, 100 watts. I've seen some with 200 or 300 watts. Converted CB rigs. I used to have a converted 23-channel CB rig that I used on 10 meters back in 1980. One of the rigs I used, they were easy to convert to 10 meters. You started at 28.5. That's where the phone band started. Those rigs work very, very well on the 12 watts PEP. They work very well on 10 meters if you can still get one of them. Here's just an example of some of the classic rigs. The old Kenwood TS520. I remember that really well when I was a kid just coming into the hobby. There's a Kenwood TS440. I think my friend KB1NG has one of those. Been around for a while, but if it's operational, still works well, you'll do fine on 10 meters. Nothing fancy needed. You'll do well. President Lincoln 2 Plus. I have one of those. Great rig to take into the field. Nice little 50-watt rig. Usually that's what I listen to 27.385 on, lower sideband. It'll run 10, it'll run 12. Nice rigs. I've worked all over Latin America. Don't talk on it as much as I do my other rig, but they're nice little rigs. I think the audio's pretty good. I get good signal reports. I've worked several guys using a President Lincoln 2 Plus. Striker 955. That's what I usually use for the powwow net. 70 watts plus. Mine runs about 80 watts. Nice rigs. Again, with this Striker, don't use the echo beep. Not a good idea. We're hams. We don't do that. The President Lincoln 2, don't use the echo beep. You don't need that, obviously. I don't think anybody would do that, but these are nice rigs. I would put the audio up on the Striker, up with a Kenwood or Yaesu or anything else. I get very good reports on this rig. I think it does well. Oh, here we go. Here's a blast from the past. Here's an old Ten-Tech modular rig. I remember these, and you could get a module. They're late 70s, early 80s when I was coming into the hobby. This was the Ten-Tech Scout. These kind of have a cult following. Guys like these. Guys that like Ten-Tech, they like Ten-Tech. I used to have a Century, 21, the CW rig when I was a kid, the 70-watt CW rig. You'd plug in the module and you could work different bands. But again, 10's easy to get on. Nothing fancy needed. Oh, we already mentioned this. The Radio Shack HTX10. These were around in the late 90s, 2000, during cycle 23. They're discontinued, but if you go on eBay, you'll see one. They're easy to find. I've had 2 or 3 of them, sold them. I had good results with the rig. Like I said, I worked a guy today recently with the 10, worked a guy today with an HTX 100. The HTX 100 was in the late 80s, early 90s. Nice rig. It does CW also, if you're interested in CW. The HTX 10 does not, but it has FM AM. But nice little rigs, easy to take in the car. And the guy that worked today on the HTX 100 was 5.9 plus from Northern Illinois. So those are nice rigs. Nice. They do very well. Here we go. Here's the Zygu. All right. This happens to be the G90. And I believe this is the QRP. Well, gosh, yeah, I think most of those are QRP. They got the waterfall. I don't know a lot about this rig. But again, I know these are relatively inexpensive. And I've heard good reports on them. I've worked a couple guys using them. They say you do very, very well. You can do very well with them. Again, 10's easy to get on. You'll do more with less than any other mode in amateur radio, I think. Here's number 7. What do you need to know about 10-meter operating? Well, in some ways it's like other HF bands, in some ways it's not. I mean, just for example, if you were on 40 meters in the middle of the day and you were on 270 or something, and you were working again in Florida and you were working again in Pennsylvania, everybody would probably hear everybody. You wouldn't have a problem. But if you were on 10 meters and I was working Florida, the guy in Florida had just finished a QSO with the guy in Pennsylvania, I wouldn't hear the guy in Pennsylvania. So it's very common on 10 meters to not hear both ends of the QSO. Interesting thing, a couple weeks ago, one of the openings I worked in, and the band, as it shifted west, and the band stayed open till probably 11 o'clock that night. I was working people in Colorado and California, and I could still hear Minnesota, and I could hear both ends of the conversation. But often you won't hear both ends of the conversation, and I think that's different than if you were like on 40 or 75, certainly 75 meter phone. There'd just be a very different kind of QSO. So that's something to remember there. Avoid CB jargon. I don't really hear CB jargon on 10 meters. I don't use it. I don't really hear it. So that's, I don't know that that's really an issue. I think the next one is important because of QSB on 10 meters. You'll hear a lot of short transmissions. If I'm chit-chatting with KB1NG or W8MOX on 10 meters, we'll sit and talk for an hour or an hour and a half or whatever. We've done that, but on 10 meters, you don't always get to do that. I have worked stations where you have a nice sporadic E skip, and you've got 2 or 3 guys that are local to each other in the Chicago area. Several of us are local to each other here, and we can all hear each other, and the QSO goes on for a while. So that's something nice, but you don't always get that on 10 meters because, again, sporadic E skip, it can be sporadic. Something that I'll do on 10 meters when I'm calling CQ is sometimes I'll say where I'm located. I'll call CQ and I'll say I'm in Virginia. That's something that I think that's helpful to people. They'll know where you are, but and it gives you an idea where the band opening is located. Something else that I'll do on 10, if I'm doing a run and I'm working several people in a row, when one QSO finishes, I'll say anyone else want to give me a call, and you'll hear several people do that. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I hear a lot of the same guys. There's a W2CCG in Boynton Beach, Florida. I've probably worked Bob 7 or 8 times. Big stations. QRZ owns repeaters, runs a kilowatt. You'll hear him 20 over, and he's just working them one after another. But you'll hear him do that. He's a very good phone operator. But another thing here too, ask the station you're working, and you'll hear someone here that maybe can you hear both parties? Just finished a QSO. Could you hear the other guy? Just get on the frequency or whatever. But just some of the things that are different. Again, 10 meters in some ways is similar to other bands, HF bands. Some ways it isn't. I guess for me, it's kind of like going to a casino. I'm not a gambler, but it's high risk, high payoff, and when it's hot, you do very, very well. I have a modest station by choice, an inclination, and I do very well on 10 meters. I'm very happy with what I do. And let's see, here we go. Additional resources for 10 meters. Again, this is not a 1010 presentation, but 1010net tell you anything you want to know about 10 meter operation, resources, how to get involved. If you want to get a 1010 number, a good way to do that. A lot of the guys here in the club have 1010 numbers. It's fantastic. Some guys are trying to get them. I know that because they've told me. And here's another great resource, and this is listed on my QRZ page. Getting ready for 10 meters. Ham Radio Perspective. That's the name of this little group. My friend Quinn Schultz, KTS, and Todd, WA9TDD. That's their organization. They make videos on all kinds of subjects. One of them happens to be 10 meters. And that's the YouTube link to it, and you can download the video. It's about 45 minutes. It's a nice video. It'll tell you what I've said and more, but those are a couple of great resources for 10 meter operation. And here we go. Special thanks. Several people have helped me with this presentation. Again, Quentin and Todd are not here, but I'll mention them because I used some of the resources from their slides. K8QS, I've worked Quentin several times, and he's got ties to the area, so I hope to meet him in person. And then Todd, WA9TDD, those guys are both 10 meter legends. They've both worked DXCC just on 10 alone. Keith, KR7RK. He's on the board of directors of 1010 International. They also gave me some resources for this presentation. Well, our very own Carrie, WA4BQM, the guru of propagation. Carrie was one of my technical consultants. Also, Mike, our very own K4CDN, was one of my technical consultants. And Doug Reese, AK4AO. I'm probably the most technically challenged person to be a ham, especially as long as I've been a ham. I'm a lawyer. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a PhD. So Doug helped me get on Logbook of the World. He also helped me to make sure that I could get my slides on here tonight. So I would like to say thank you to all those people.
Thank you, Bill. This has been pretty awesome. Hearing all about and learn some things about 10 meters. I certainly did not. We can kind of end the official meeting here. So once again, Bill, thank you so much. Good stuff. And well, at this point, stick around if you want to. Everybody, pretty casual time now. So thank you everybody for attending.